Recording in
Come out, it's okay.
We would keep it to just one day.
Oh, Austin, we got you over there, sir.
How you doing, man? Good to see you. Okay, so we'll look at that. Coming up with the.
Yeah, it was Randy.
Was he the only one? Okay, then I'll just make personal contact with him and we'll still notify. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. First thing.
I wouldn't figure out how to force it downloaded or.
From the text.
Oh, now.
I got a thing that's so, I want to add Robert Bob Maury
To,
to the list there. I've got an email for that. And can talk about treasurer's report and graffiti.
Chad, can you hear me?
I can, Bob.
Okay. Hey, Chad, the issue that I'm trying to understand is this is not just this month's treasurer's report, is you have many pages that are removed, either removed or the check detail not made available to look at because of confidentiality. And I'm trying to understand why, particularly when it's like 13 or 14 pages of checks. Can you, if we can get that question answered, that would be one thing.
It's wages.
is that now? Yeah, it's individual salaries, so it's the person's name and their individual personal deductions. So we remove the pages only for the individual salaries.
And and that would be on the ones where we've done, we've removed some detail or modified detail on a page because there'd be some of that information on one of the pages, and that's why the page has been modified.
Correct, and it's tied to an individual and it's tied to their personal deductions. So what they chose for their W-2, for, you know, for their tax filing, any personal deductions, if they had a garnishment, any type of things like that. So we remove those from there. Only salary related information. We leave the ones that are the liability checks. So the ones we write for PERS, for health insurance, we leave those because they're not specifically tied to the individual and their individual private information.
Thank you, Justine.
And it's accounted for in the treasurer's report as well, as far as per department.
Correct.
Pardon?
It's also accounted for in the treasurer's report per department as to what the salary is for each department.
Yes, and that is shown, so that's fine. Thank you. The other question I had was.
Sorry. Mr. Maury?
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and officially start the meeting now. And if you could hold your other question until we get to our visitor section. I've got you written down as a visitor who would like to speak. Sorry, we got a little ahead of ourselves.
Thank you, no problem.
All right. I'm going to call the April 6th City Council meeting to order, and welcome to all of our visitors. It's been a really long time since we've had folks in this room, so it's good to see you all. Before we get started on the agenda, I would like a motion to add, you'll see on your adjusted agenda that we've added the Parks Master Plan for some discussion under old business.
I move that we accept the new agenda as updated with the master plan on, Parks Master Plan on it.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I didn't hear Brent, but where did you go? Brent, did you vote?
He was having connectivity issues. I think he's back, but he's muted.
I show Brent as being attached, but he is muted.
I did see him a bit ago.
Okay, we have a quorum, so I'm gonna go ahead and move along. We will do, when we get down to the visitors section, we'll do you all, if you have signed up, we'll go through those first to speak. And then we will, if there are people listening at home, then we'll do those second. And if visitors at home would like to use the raise hand function or email chat suite, then we will call on you at that time. Is there any declaration of conflict of interest from any of the counselors?
No.
No.
No. I'm just gonna wait a minute.
Okay, you're on, Brent.
Brent, we are at declaration of conflict of interest. Do you have any conflict? He unmuted, but no, got it. No conflict of interest by head gestures. Okay, approval of minutes. We have three meeting minutes plus 2 public hearing minutes sets attached to those. So is there corrections or a motion to approve the March 2nd regular meeting minutes?
This is the March 2nd. Yeah, Mayor Plana, I had talked with Chad earlier before the meeting about requiring the minutes to include names of counselors that approve or dissent against the motion in the minutes. So
Like a roll call?
so most of those motions that we approved did not include the names of each counselor. It was it's consistency error that I think that should be added in the future. So I just asked that be added in this minutes.
Is that required when there are 5? That's unanimous.
When it's unanimous, probably not, but I think it should be done. We do this for the other minutes usually, so this is just part of our
Okay.
process, and we can look at that. And we'll make a change before you sign the final copy, so it won't be tonight that we sign the final. Thank you.
Are there any other changes though? Motion, go ahead.
I move we approve the minutes, March 2nd.
I second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Okay, then we have the special meeting from March 3rd. Is there a motion to approve?
I move we approve special meeting March 3rd minutes.
So second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Brent,
Oh, aye,
thank you. Those
got
opposed?
some distraction. Sorry.
It's okay. Those opposed? None. Moving on to the public hearing and special meeting of the city council for March 29th.
I move we approve the minutes for March 29th special meeting.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Oh, wait, excuse me, I had a couple of things on the 29th. Page 3,
Go ahead, Brett.
got my Uncle Kent taken off, but page 3, it says Counselor Warren included, how do you define medium or a medium meaningful portion? That should actually be meaningful or a meaningful portion. Not,
Are you on the hearing minutes?
I'm on public hearing meeting March 29.
Okay, I don't think we've gotten to the public hearing minutes
Oh,
yet.
okay.
We were just doing the council minutes.
Okay,
Okay, so we're doing March 29th council minutes only.
okay.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
I,
Opposed? None. Okay, moving on to, these are the public hearing minutes for March 2nd. Motion to approve.
I move that we approve the updated public hearing minutes of March 29th. Is that right?
March 2nd.
March 2nd, excuse me.
Is there a second?
I have it dated March 29th. Is there a reason why we're going March 2nd?
Well, there's two sets.
I have a March 3rd.
Okay, so I'm sorry if I flipped around things. We had 3 sets of regular minutes.
Got it.
And
Okay.
2 of them have
Right.
special extra minutes from the public hearing portion. And I'm just trying to address them all separately.
Right, I got the March 2nd one now.
Okay. We have a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the final set of minutes, March 29th, public hearing continuance for the Gerhart Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Is there a motion to approve?
I have a correction.
Go ahead.
It's very silly, but on the 3rd page. On the 3rd page, 3.1, and the paragraph starts with Peter Watts. The second line down, there's a phrase, if you think about the park across from City Hall, that across should not be capitalized.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, I have another one on page 3. The second to the last paragraph says Counselor Warren included, how do you define medium or a medium meaningful portion? That should be, instead of medium, it should be meaningful.
Can you read the corrected minutes then?
Sure, it should be, how do you define meaningful or a meaningful portion?
Okay, we've got that.
Okay, and on page 5, second paragraph, it says Counselor Smith said on page 3, a purpose and objectives of the whole plan. Carrie, do you remember saying that? Because I thought I said that.
I do not recall saying that. I believe it was you.
Okay. If we can get that changed, that would be great.
Got it.
Okay, we have 3 corrections. Is there a motion to approve with corrections?
So moved.
Well, second,
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
aye,
Opposed? Okay. We've got through the minutes. All right, mayor's report. I will try and keep this brief. I had an email this month and one of our folks asked me to do more frequent blog posts. Maybe one that just encapsulates some of the things that we are working on completing. More specifically, it was about the children's play area, because we solicited donations about a year ago. And there are just a lot of process steps and it takes a while. So I've addressed that in this blog post, which I will put out tomorrow. We are doing elevations right now. We'll do site prep after that. We've ordered the play equipment and it should be in sometime this month. And we're hoping that we would have everything in place by around the 1st of July. And we'll have some sort of a dedication, I hope, at that time. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is that counselors, you'll see that the ordinance that we had requested staff work on with regard to banning bicycles on the ridge path is not on the agenda. And my notes are, what I said is that my thinking about bikes on the ridge path is evolving, partly because of the public testimony at the Parks Master Plan meeting and also some of the correspondence that we've gotten over the last month or so. And where I personally would choose not to ride bikes on the ridge path and have not actually myself. I understand the need for parents to have their kids be able to ride safely to town, and also understand that there can be some safety hazards for walkers if bicyclists don't take care in passing pedestrians. I hope that we can find a solution that will balance these key issues, perhaps without an ordinance. I'm unsure at this time. But I do think it's important to leave the historic descriptions of the path in our parks plan language, which it is historically a footpath. And prior ordinances in this town have specifically limited vehicles and horses from the path. And Chad and I are talking about what we can do short of an ordinance with some updated signage. And maybe some safety crossings, particularly on 3rd Street is really probably the most dangerous crossing because you're coming down and there's just not very good sight there. The last thing I want to point out is that I was dismayed this week to hear that some people in Gerhart have been harassing our volunteer firefighters and their families. Like literally while they're out in their yard or walking down their street. And I feel like as a caregiver for the last 45 years, I can attest that people who work to serve others, like our police, our firefighters, nurses, doctors, and wait staff, are subject sometimes to harassment and bullying, no matter which side of the issue you're on. And while it is a protected right, this type of discourse is still bullying, downright uncivil behavior, and I cannot condone it. And I think it's unfortunate for our community. That's all I have for tonight. Counselor report. Austin, you want to go first?
Don't have much to report tonight.
Rita?
I have nothing to report, Your Honor.
Brent?
I participated in a Zoom call town hall with Senator Merkley and a bunch of Clatsop County political folks. Talked about funding, potential funding for the police fire station. And let's see, Mayor's Coffees, couple of those, and a fire station open house. Had a lot of good conversations with our citizens and got some interesting feedback, which we'll be discussing under new business. And
Thank
that's
you.
it.
Thank you. And Carrie?
I walked the ridge path specifically to look at some encroachments on the path itself and on the right of way. I've had a meeting with the mayor. And I tried to put the sign up. Had a little wind action that was kind of interesting with it, but other than that, that's all I got to report.
And Chief of Police is not here. He has submitted his statistics.
He is on.
He was here.
Chief Bowman, do you want to speak at the meeting? There, I saw his.
Yeah,
There he is.
thank you, Madam Mayor, appreciate it. Search for the third officer. No, I'm not going in there. The search for is going to terminate at midnight on April 10th, which is this coming Sunday coming up. On Saturday the 16th, we're going to be running ORPAT, physical agility tests. And on April 22nd, which is a Friday, we'll be doing oral interviews. Again, it will be Chad, Sergeant Brown, and myself. We have 8 applicants, which is the same number that we had for our first 2 rounds of looking for a third officer. The police report, there isn't a whole lot I want to add to it. Some of you that may have been listening to the rumors that were running through this weekend that a house was burglarized either on Cottage Street or Creekside. That's false information that was going out there. There was no house that was burglarized. The hit and run accident that's in the second column, that has been cleared now with an arrest. Sergeant Brown has wrapped up his theft fraud case that he's been working on for almost a year that involves hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's up at the DA's office. Child sexual abuse case that Sergeant Brown's been working on. It's up at the DA's office. And I have a fraud case, which I basically already cleared it. It's a theft one, and then the fraud in the second column on the bottom. The insurance company's already paid off on that. And we only have one suspect. We have video, and we're just waiting for some accounting records, and that will go up to the DA's office. And short of that, there isn't a whole lot more to report. You know, the 4 traffic accidents were on the highway. And one interesting thing. So one of the theft twos that's on there, there was a guy that was working at the new pot shop. He was sleeping in his motorhome behind over there at North Coast Plaza. And he said that about 4 o'clock in the morning, he noticed his motorhome moving a little bit and heard a little bit of noise, but didn't think much of it until he heard a large car start up, a loud car start up and pull away. So he looked out the window real quick and it was a small type car. So he went back to bed, sleep, and about 6:30 when he went to start his motorhome up, it sounded like a diesel engine running. And it was someone that cut his catalytic converter off his motorhome while he's sleeping in it.
Oh, geez.
So
That didn't wake up.
anymore, the thefts of catalytic converters, they're still on the rise, even though in Oregon passed a law that people couldn't buy them without certain certifications and everything. It's still on the rise. It takes about 15 or 20 seconds underneath your car to remove your catalytic converter with a battery operated Sawzall. And I've always said the only reason why they came out with battery operated tools was to make it more efficient for the thieves, because contractors had compressors or generators that they ran off of, or electrical boxes already hooked up. So it's going to continue to be on the rise. If you leave your car, your motorhome out in these parking lots, don't be surprised if your catalytic converters ends up being missing. Does anybody else have any questions of me?
No,
Okay,
thank you.
you're welcome.
Chief Como.
Yeah, I could share my screen. It says it's disabled.
Hold on.
Chris is in there.
I can fill the time by saying we have your statistics.
You do have the stats.
Okay, you might need to refresh, but you can try again.
Perfect. Thank you. So, those statistics is what I'll kind of start with first. Let me get this off of my screen. We ended March 2022 on call 149. So that was a total of 40 calls for the entire month. March 2021, which was a record year, we ended on call 126. So we're 23 calls ahead of the previous year. Of those 40 calls we had last month, that was the sheet metal mail that you were talking about. Those are the 40 call breakdown that you have. 17 of them are inside the city and 20 is inside the district. 3 of them was aid, whether auto mutual aid. 2 of them was to Seaside. 1 was for coverage during their banquet. Every year Seaside has their awards banquet and we cover them, so their community's taken care of during our awards banquet. They return the favor. And they cover us during that same time. So that way they make sure that the community has something for that. The other one was a carbon monoxide alarm, pretty easy call to go to normally. CISA was just having some low staffing, so they asked for some aid and we sent over to help them with that one. Lewis and Clark, there was a motor vehicle accident on Lewis and Clark Road. The call we sent aid to on that one. Dispatch, I think originally thought it was in our district. Up Lewis and Clark Road, as we're getting to the end of our district, we ended up finding it was past it. So I called for Lewis and Clark to be toned out. We were on scene obviously because we were well en route before they even got toned out. I talked to their chief, and since we already set up, we weren't going to leave the call or leave the people there, so he decided to handle it for them, take care of that call. So that one. And then we asked for 8 0 times last month. We did have our awards banquet this last month, and during it, a couple of good, really cool things happened. You all were made aware of James Hutchinson last month. He went from interim training officer to our paid full-time training officer. During the awards banquet, he was promoted from lieutenant to division chief of training and operations. So I want to bring him tonight, so you guys get to meet him and put a face to the name. We can have a quick second to say hi.
Hi guys, my name's James Hutchinson. You can all call me Hutch. It's one of the 3 years that nickname for me. Started with the department in August of 2014, and I have since held the title of cadet, intern, volunteer, part-time firefighter, and then working as the interim and now full-time training officer and division chief of training and operations. I had a little bit of background with the county sheriff's department, working with them with search and rescue and marine patrol for a little while. And I'm more than excited to be here and serve the citizens of Gearhart moving forward.
Very cool.
Thanks, man.
So the other pretty cool monumental thing that happened at awards banquet was John Blissett got his 60-year service pin. So he's been serving Gearhart Fire and the community of Gearhart for 60 years. Yeah. I don't know if that is a record for the state, but so that's a lot of years just with us. So I should see if we can get there. Community events, last month, the open house went really well. Getting some kids to come to them, they're climbing around the trucks, playing with the large hoses. Really good to have families and stuff come in and see our equipment and see what we do. See what types of stuff we use, what types of calls we go to. It's really good for the community to come to. We'll have 2 more this month, Saturday 16th and Saturday the 30th. They will be same time, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Before the one on the 16th, we're gonna do like an Easter egg hunt for the community. The field across from the fire station, which is where the park will go. At 10 a.m. we'll have an egg hunt for all the kids. Will be kind of a couple of different areas, kind of like what Seaside Sunset Park does. And so I'll spread some eggs out. Have kids run around, pick up some eggs, have some fun, and then directly after that, we'll have our open house. So on that day. Last month we had some better daylights during our drill time, so we were out more, and typical this time of year it allows us to get us outside training and in our environment where we're going to be doing stuff. Last week was a good drill. We had our bobbin refresher, which we have to do every day to keep our bobbin certifications with that. Typical monthly layout for drills. The first Wednesday of every month is medical drill night. Tonight our online medical directors next door doing case reviews, and then she puts the topic for the lecture on. With that, the first week of every month before drill is our officers meeting. And then the second week every month is our business meeting night. The association has their business meeting night after they do all the apparatus checks, make sure the gear's working correctly, everything's where it's supposed to be, and everything works. The rest of the weeks is revolved around fire, like wildland, structural, or like NVA's car crashes or water rescues, rope rescues, all the other types of calls we can go to and do. And then the last week of every month before drills are safety committee for that. It's kind of wraps around typical month of training for us. Continuing with the dispatch and radio communications I've been talking to you guys about. Dispatch is waiting on FCC licensing. They submitted it to take a frequency that was just in North County to extend it so it'll be broadcast on North and South County. The equipment is here. It's at, I believe it's at Day Wireless in Vancouver. They're waiting for the FCC licensing to be approved and gone through, and they'll put the equipment out. They can't put it up beforehand because if they do, the license is null and void, and they have to go through the whole licensing process, resubmit new stuff with new equipment. It's just kind of a pain. So we're waiting for a paper trail to get put in place before they can put new equipment up for that. The 2 grants I told you about that we submitted for a 27-year-old water tender, and then a recruitment and retention person for 4 years, as well as some PPE, some fire gear turnouts are submitted. No news is good news. So the longer we don't hear that it's a no, it's better. And grants could take sometimes up to a year more to get back.
And the SAFER grant is for 3 different departments, right?
Yes, it's a regional grant between us at Hamlet and Cannon Beach that we put in. It'll be a person that solely focuses, a non-active firefighter, so it's not a firefighter person. And it's somebody for 4 years that their job is focused on how to better recruitment and keep the people we have in retention. And with that, because we'll be getting hopefully new people and stuff, we have PPE mixed in with that grant. So because it's a regional grant, because it's 4 years, it's a little over $2 million grant that we submitted. But it'll get us 4 to 5 sets of full turnouts every year for 4 years, as well as a bunch of other stuff mixed in with that, which will help us all 3 departments out.
So the person goes away after 4 years, but the turnouts.
The turnouts stay, and everything the person put in place, whether the media, the publications, everything they did for the entire 4 years is ours. They're just kind of to help us get up, and then we can keep it going as a snail. But yeah, everything we get during the process stays. Since it is getting nicer weather, I wanted to let everybody know about burning stuff real quick. You can go to our website, gearhartfire.com. From there, you can click on burning, or you can just go /burning-regulations. fill out a burn permit on there. That way you don't have to come in, fill something out. We get an email right away when someone fills that out. They get the regulations, everything put on there, and so hopefully you guys can be a little bit quicker, a little bit easier for the citizens of your to fill it out. They can get the correct regulations. Hopefully be safe for burning. With that, and then one last thing I wanted to bring up is I heard a few citizens talking about the reason why some of our firefighters are pushing so hard for this fire station is that they think that the firefighters are promised full-time or part-time positions. And I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that nobody has been even promised a part-time position with that. Our goal here and what we're doing is we're a volunteer department, and that's how it's going to stay the best of our abilities. The new facility is built around volunteers and to keep volunteers coming and keep even a volunteer program. With that, Seaside's very successful in their intern program. That's why they have the dorm rooms in there, so we get interns. It's really hard to get interns in an area where it's super expensive to live and hard to get a place to live. So if you have a dorm room for an intern to stay in or bunkering people to pull shifts in your volunteer program, just keep coming from there and stuff. So want to make sure that everybody knew that nobody's getting paid. Nobody's been promised anything. There's no positions coming up, and there's not going to be any more paid staff. Verify that. And unless there's any questions, that's all I have for this month.
I have a question.
Mhm.
The personal open house this Saturday of that on Cottage, will you be there?
Open house. Oh, this Saturday at the.
Yes.
Yes, I plan to be there.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions for Chief Como? Gonna move on to city treasurer report. Christine, thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Chief does have to leave as to what's going on, so he's gonna step out here real quick.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Chief.
So as we enter into the final quarter of the fiscal year, we are financially stable. Since last month's report in the general fund revenues, we've received our annual Northwest Natural Gas franchise payment and a pretty significant payment in our local marijuana tax as we continue to collect some back taxes from one of our local shops that was accidentally being paid to the state. Compared to last year at this time, our general fund revenues have increased by 26.1%. Part of that is the COVID grant money that we have received in the general fund. The noteworthy general fund areas of comparison from this year compared to last year, the building and plumbing permits are down about $91,000. Marijuana tax is up $120,000. And transient room tax is up about $199,000. Water receipt revenue is up $38,000 and our state street revenue is up about $11,800. In expenditures, there's nothing very notable this last month, but in comparison to last year, our building and plumbing inspection costs have decreased. It's about $67,000 decrease. And that would be anticipated since our revenue is down and we just have reduced permit activity this year compared to last. The police officer personnel costs have decreased, which is also anticipated because we had a department vacancy for this entire year as we continue to try to hire a police officer and have not been yet successful. Our water expenditures have increased about $122,000, which is partially attributed to a SCADA upgrade, which is a software upgrade, which was budgeted and planned. And our water reserve fund expenditures have increased, which was an approved water conservation and seismic plan. And we also have in our building revenue our building reserve expenditures, the fire and police relocation, $46,000 have been spent as we do our due diligence for the general obligation bond. That's all I have for finance, but I would like to just take a minute to thank everybody as we go through the backflow process. So the city of Gerhart does have a mandatory requirement to make sure that everybody is in compliance with backflows. That process due to COVID and just some spreadsheet errors, we've had to kind of go back and contact a lot of homeowners and kind of talk about backflow and what backflow is. And we really appreciate everybody's patience as we get back into compliance with that. And our local vendors have been great. We have a couple of backflow vendors that have just stepped up and that they're doing literally hundreds of backflows for us in the last month, so.
Can you just briefly remind me what that actually is?
Sure, so the EPA and the state of Oregon by statute requires us to make sure that our water is safe. And in order to do that, apparently the water pipe comes into your house, and for certain activities that you do in your plumbing, sprinkler systems in your home, up in the ceilings, irrigation systems, and old boilers or large commercial boilers. Those tend to be the three things that you install in your home that can push dirty water back up into your pipes for certain reasons, which would push it back up into our water system. So it's a mechanism that on the other side, there's a water meter, and on the other side, there's a backflow device. It could be located many places in your home. A boiler backflow might be in your basement. And it stops the water from going back in, like a flap. Got it. That's the best of my knowledge.
That was great.
Mr. Watts, do you have a report?
I do. I've been getting a lot of emails about things like signs, and I appreciate that people with varying viewpoints have put up different signs because it allows me to demonstrate viewpoint neutrality on temporary political signs. If you've driven on highways or freeways in the state of Oregon, you'll notice that you'll often see large political signs. Those are temporary political signs. Commercial signs, new commercial signs are not allowed on any Oregon freeway or highway. The ones that you see are grandfathered in, but for the couple months before an election, because political speech via sign, which is a cheap and efficient way to express your belief, so saith Justice Stevens on the Supreme Court, because of that special status, they are allowed. Though what I've told Chad, I think I've always been consistent on this, and I was not the city attorney in 2012 when there may or may not have been some action taken on a sign, is that if it causes a health or safety issue, so if it causes sightline issues for a driver or things of that nature that could make it dangerous, and particularly properties on a corner, that's the sort of thing that could, I don't believe it has happened, but it could happen, that in those instances, we would ask that the people move that sign to a place that didn't constitute a health or a safety issue. Other than that my legal advice to him had been not to attempt to regulate it. As some people have pointed out, that opinion left open the possibility of some reasonable amounts of limitations. What those would be, I can't tell you, but I don't think we necessarily want to find out, because I don't think this has been a big problem, and I don't know that it's been a big problem this election cycle either. Oregon free speech rights are even more broad than the First Amendment rights under the United States Constitution. They've been construed that way by the Oregon Supreme Court on numerous occasions. So that adds an extra wrinkle to signage and an extra reason why, in my opinion, the best approach is to only regulate that if it's causing a health or safety issue. With that said, if council wants, we can have a more robust discussion on legal risk, and we can attempt to put something together that I think would comply with the Oregon Constitution and the US Constitution. It would not be ready before this specific election cycle. So we would not be, because we'd want to do it by ordinance. And so that wouldn't be in play this time, could be in play in the future. That would be a real threading of the needle. And you know, I just don't know where courts would come down on it. So I guess my preference would be that we not explore the topic unless something's a major problem. But I think there's been a lot of misinformation about the legal advice I've given on signs. I believe I have been 100% consistent. And if I haven't, that was my fault. Had nothing to do with Chad. But that's where I am on signs. As far as the US Bank v. Shannon Smith case, Dean Alterman, who is representing her, filed basically asking that the suit be dismissed. The respondents are, of course, objecting to that. I expect that a hearing will be scheduled on that. Very complicated facts that probably could not occur in today's more regulated mortgage market, but you know, we'll see what the judge does with that. I have a feeling they're probably going to grant it. He's probably going to grant it. I took notes on the Parks Master Plan per council's request, and those are just some ideas and perhaps some clarifications which will help you guys have a more robust conversation. I don't know exactly what the right answer is for Gerhardt, but I've flagged some inconsistencies and some other things for you as a council to consider. And other than that, I'm actually not the arbiter of any potential election violations. That is the Secretary of State's office. So to the extent that people have a complaint, if you go to the Secretary of State's election division, there is a link to filing elections complaints. It is an email. Those complaints may not be filed anonymously. They would have to have a name and a telephone number, but that is the entity, the Secretary of State's office, that regulates election matters, not me as your city attorney, nor would I want to. And that's, I guess, all that I have, unless people have questions for me.
Just one question on the Parks Master Plan, on the notations that you've made. So will we have those by the next meeting then?
Right, so what I wanted to do is, before I've jotted down notes, I think I know what people are looking for, but I wanted to talk about it a little bit tonight. And then once I kind of have that guidance, then I can type up specific things and get those to Carol for inclusion so that they can be discussed at the next meeting. The reason why I wanted to discuss it at this meeting is because if we continue the hearing to a date certain, which was this city council meeting, then we don't have to go through all the public noticing that we would have to otherwise. And so it leads to greater efficiency and lesser costs, which is why I suggested it. But I do have notes. I think I flagged most of the issues that I thought could be issues. And then once you give me your guidance, I'll be able to come up with some specific language before the next meeting. I hope to do it early, by early next week. I've been having some bad allergies, so perhaps not as productive as, hopefully we'll get a little bit more rain and get some of this pollen out of the air. But I hope to have them done by early next week, so you guys have plenty of time to consider.
Thank you, Peter. City Administrator's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So when we're speaking tonight, if we can just try to use as big a voice as you can, some of the issues that we're having with our minutes is just this system is not perfect. We are looking into replacing the system and budgeting for it for the next year. But moving forward, we are going to continue to have both Zoom and public meetings as long as everything goes well. So you will be able to attend the meetings both ways now. There'll also be recordings of these meetings. They are all recorded. And just the louder voices would be helpful for staff. So some of the day-to-day updates, the building department's going well. As you see, building permits are down. And the reason that we also see a savings in that building department is because, as you recall, our building official is not an employee with the city of Gerhart. They actually run on a percentage of the building permits. So when building permits are down, so is the expenditures. And so far, that's been working really well for Gerhart. We've been working with Leonard Brogdon. He's our temporary building official for the moment. We have put out an RFP for new building officials to come into the city of Gerhart. And we've extended it 2 months because we're still working on with the state to solidify our plan. Gerhart is unique and we're one of the cities that still uses a contract building official. And so we want to make sure that we're doing everything correctly. So that RFP is planned to be closed June 15th, and we'll be able to get into the selection process. And the city council will be assisting with that. Code enforcement, I had nothing to report except the ridge path incursions that were mentioned earlier. I'm writing a letter and working with a homeowner on one of those. With some plantings that were done into the ridge path. So that's been started, and we'll report more as we finish there. Public Works annual backflow testing letters. Again, we talked about that, and thank you very much for all of your work on that, Justine. The city's water conservation plan update. We're in the middle of a major plan update for our water conservation plan. And this update is exciting because it's also going to take in a water seismic risk management plan to where our system will be looked at by professionals in the emergency services to take a look at how it will fare in various types of emergencies, earthquakes, tsunamis, power outages, and that sort of thing. So we'll be able to take this information and start looking at future upgrades. We're already looking at those now, and we just completed a grant request for $35,000 to bring in more power supply into our reservoir so that we can have constant telemetry, which is the communication between the two. And it will also supply our ham radio operations hut with power in the case of a long-term outage. So we just submitted that grant, and we're hopeful for that as well.
Does our water department make that update, or how do we, who leads that effort?
We're working with consultants to do so, engineers. And yes, the staff is very much involved in this.
So the water conservation plan, was that turned into the state by the 31st?
No, it wasn't, but the extension was filed before then. And so we have an extension and we're continuing to move forward.
Yeah.
Let's see, playground equipment we covered, fire station update. The city website has lots of new documents on it, working on factual documents available, including the new tax calculator, which I think is going to be a topic here in a little bit. Political signs have been covered. Last day to register to vote is April 26th, and ballots are going to begin mailing about April 27th. Grants is another topic that's been coming up and percolating within the area. People are very hopeful that we would be able to write some grants to be able to pay or help pay for the fire station. And I just want to let you know that the staff has been for years now working with these organizations such as AFG, with FEMA and all sorts of other, and the state of Oregon as well, trying to find any monies that we can to reduce the bond that would be required to build this new station. So what we've attached here is just an idea, and this is available online for those of you that don't have a piece of paper on here. This is a list of all the grants that we have written since 2004, as a matter of fact. And so both the ones that we've been successful on and the ones that we haven't been successful. And I think that Gearhart's doing pretty well. A couple of the highlights on that is in 2004, the first grant that the fire department wrote was for $67,000 for self-contained breathing apparatus, $18,000 for ladders and thermal imagers. $184,000 was received by the fire station. The Unimog that we have, that's that large off-road vehicle, was paid through a federal grant and equipped by money raised by the volunteer fire department. Some other highlights is we just received on 2018-2019, we received a $145,000 grant for new self-contained breathing apparatus, which is required. $54,000 for MASH care, cash food, water, and shelter, which we have stored up out of the inundation zone with thousands of portions of food, water purification, equipment, and first aid. Parks Master Plan that we're working on right now is a grant that we wrote. We just received a $100,000 grant from the ODOT Small City Allotment for sidewalks and curb replacements. So the city has been very active. We've applied for over $6,700,000 in grants. We've got 1,900,000 pending, and we've been successful so far, about $713,000. With that in particular is an example that's attached to this is one of the many grant programs that advertise that they fund fire station construction projects. And I want to bring your attention to the page that I gave the council, and I'm sorry, it's online as well, but this USDA grant program that people were pretty excited about. The USDA Rural Development Grant does have essential community facilities granting for public safety services such as fire departments, police stations, prisons, police vehicles, fire trucks, and the like. The problem down in the USDA is the funding availability for those grants are for low-income communities having a median household income below 80% of the state's non-metropolitan median household income. Sounds like a big deal there. So the median income, and let me just make sure that I get this correct here. For example, the current census says Gearhart's median income is about $83,000. And where this grant even starts, where it becomes applicable, is at about the $52,000 range and below that. So that's one of the programs that we keep looking at, but it's just impossible for us to get. The other one is the BRIC, which is funding a new building construction for critical facilities. If the current facility is located in a hazard zone, this construction activity for us is not eligible because BRIC can fund mitigation projects to reduce risk from natural hazards, such as upgrades beyond codes to buildings for floods, retrofitting of buildings for wind, or application of like ignition resistant construction. This building here is not repairable. We really can't use it to build a new station or to build on top of it. Again, it's concrete brick, unreinforced, and is, starting to crumble. So those are ones that we were looking at. We're also looking at the station construction grant. This is the House bill to fund some station construction grants. It's HR 3728. Checked on it this morning. It is still stuck in the House committee. And even if it wasn't stuck in the House committee, they're going to look at things such as our average wages here in this area, and also community buy-in. If the community is heading towards a direction, then some of these grants and things will be a little bit easier for us to write as well. So sometimes it's cart before the horse, but we're keeping an eye on that. We have applied in the past for a station station construction grant and we're denied. And this was in 2009. We went for a community block grant. Our population was too small. So it didn't have enough impact for the amount of people that they had considered at that time. Things have definitely changed in Deer Heart since then, but I still don't think we make those thresholds. We looked at Business Oregon. We began the process with them, looking at loans and things like that, and they just weren't available to us, and they weren't as good as what a bond would be in regards to any type of loan. And there's some others on there. So we're going to continue to scour for all grants possible. As you see, we have quite a few out there already, and with the hopes of reducing that. But all the equipment that we have, the vehicles that we have, and all that will be moved up to the new station if that is successful or not, or successful. There is no other fire trucks or other types of equipment other than what would be necessary for desks, cabinets, and the use of the building. So we intend on taking all of our equipment that we have and bringing it up there. Because of our grants and because of the fundraising that the association does, we're in pretty good shape as far as equipment goes. On our radar, we have a work session for May 31st. That is going to be city administrator review and potentially another agenda item if one comes up. And as a reminder, we also have a special council meeting in April 19th at 6 p.m. Parks Master Plan. Saturday, April 23rd is busy coming up. We have the Deer Heart Cleanup Day, which is a dump drop box. The city brings in, with the help of Recology, some dump boxes. Residents of Deer Heart are able to come and just dump into them until they're full. We crush it down as much as we can, and there's no cost to the residents for that. It's part of the cleanup efforts. That day, we're also going to do the emergency cash day. So for those of you that want to store supplies out of the inundation zone, take a look at our website. You can purchase a barrel from us, and then we will put it up into the area where we also have our emergency supplies stashed. And then that day also, we have the Solve Beach cleanup. So there's some volunteers in town that are putting this together. They're very motivated and they're excited about this. Meet at the 10th Street Beach Access, 10 a.m. to noon on the 23rd. Of note, budget committee applications, we're still accepting until Friday, April 29th. The first budget meeting is Thursday, May 5th, and there may be one other budget meeting after that if necessary, but usually it's one meeting. I would encourage anybody who's interested in learning more about the budget process for the city of Deer Heart to attend. It's very educational, and we're pretty proud of our budget. Apps are on the website under Contact Us and Job Openings. That might be one place actually. So, but it's on there. Grant donations. Let's see here. So we have revenue sharing funds available to the city of Deer Heart that come from the state. Council so far and the budget committee has chosen to give those revenue sharing funds to nonprofits within the area. We are accepting applications for that. So if you know somebody that could benefit within Deer Heart on some of those dollars, to please submit an application. We've been very careful. We've let all the people know that we know that have applied before and have gotten grants before. They've been notified. So we expect those to come in. We're not getting as many as I expected, but we don't have as much money as we used to either. So we'll see how that works out. And that'll be part of the budget committee process as well, something to get involved with. After that, we have 2 coffees with the mayor. I forgot to just verify this with you. We're looking at April 13th at 11 at the volunteer fire station, and April 26th, coffee with the mayor at the volunteer fire station. Mayor Cochran sets up a table and is available for questions, and some staff will be there to answer questions as well.
Chad, how many vacancies are on the budget committee?
4
So,
total. We have, I know of one that is re-upped.
Okay.
So that's one of them. I know that past Mayor Dyke has applied as well. And we have a couple of other applications in there. So, yeah, but yeah, we could use a few more. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're gonna move on to correspondence. Just real briefly, we got 3 different emails with regard to bicycles on the Ridge Path. They were all hoping to not have an ordinance restricting bicycles on the Ridge Path. And then a late one for the counselors came from Henry Balanciever from Warrenton. He is looking for a mayor or a counselor to be on the Public Safety Coordinating Council. And if you are interested in being on that, I would be happy to submit your name to them. I'm going to decline the offer at this time. And it is primarily looking at the resources and coordination of local offenders and in particular younger local offenders. Looks like primarily what you would be working on. And I have not seen this one. It's with regard to restrictions on the use of Dunes Meadow Park. Have we responded to that one?
No, I don't believe we have.
Do you tell us?
Okay,
So we can talk about that next week.
gotcha. And there was also a piece of correspondence from Bob Shortman. Did that get on there as well?
There
Oh, I'm sorry, I
is,
didn't know you were finished.
there's a note from you and from him, I guess. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, if the council had any questions, I'd be happy to answer about that.
I was confused,
Also,
and I apologize for being confused, but I was by the exchange because I don't know what preceded it.
that's part of the story, is the proceeding and some lack of communication. And I will say that Bob Shortman is not here, so I'm gonna try to keep this as even keeled as possible, but there was a report from 2012 apparently that I had asked to have a large sign, a vote for Bob's sign removed from my house. I have no data on that, nor did I make that decision. So I was asking, the press was calling me about this. We went through all of our emails, we went through all of our documents, we went through everything that we could find as far as code enforcement, and there's just nothing about this. So the press was calling, asking me about this as a letter was submitted to the press prior to me knowing about it. I reached out to Bob asking him what he had and if he had any proof. Otherwise, I had to issue some sort of retraction to the press. That was the purpose of the communication. It wasn't as a threat because I wanted to be fair. I chose still not to enter into the situation because I couldn't clarify with Bob before the press actually went out. But in fact, we have no record of such a transaction, no memory of such a transaction. And he was not able to provide anything to the city so far that had happened.
Thank you.
So that's an update on that situation.
Thank you. I thought it was referring to the current situation regarding signs, but he was talking about 10 years ago.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. We are now at the visitors section. If you're at home, you can use the raise hand function, or you can email Chad Sweet at Chad Sweet at City of Gerhart. And do remember to state your name and address for the record. And Robert Lee, you're up first.
Primarily, my issue was I was gonna,
Do you want to give your name and address?
Robert Lee, 8th Street, Gerhart,
And your actual physical address, because it's part of the record. Thank you.
627 8th. The reason I wanted to speak, I thought perhaps, but I see you have some letters about the bikes on the path.
Right.
And, you know, I'm on the path all the time, and, you know, the condition of the path is fine. The children that are on the path, especially in the summertime, even when there's groups, they're very polite in getting off their bikes and letting people pass. So to close off that path for children, I just don't agree with. And your son, my son, rode on that path many times. I'm sure they tore up a lot of things, but you know, I think the path is great. I think it should remain natural, but in no means prohibit bicycles. You know, we have elk on the path, so I don't know how you're going to do that one, but
Right.
but that's primarily what I wanted to speak to. And I've been here for 50 years, you know, and the path has always been the same. The roots are stumblers. The water is not too deep, and it's nice to walk. And like I said, the children enjoy it. We don't see a lot here at this time, but in the summertime, people have summer houses and stuff. They're here. So
Thank you for that.
thank you.
And Mitch Kogan.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Council. Mr. Kogan, 117 Ridge Drive. I had a couple of questions. Grant seems to be a hot topic tonight, so I'm gonna follow suit there, because I'm a bit confused. The whole grant situation with respect to the fire station is causing a lot of consternation in this town. And I think it's reflected by the social media posts and conversations that are going on. And lots of people are troubled by the fact that, you know, we have this huge bond measure coming up in a little over a month. And as far as anybody knows, as far as it appears, there really has not been a serious effort by the city to figure out what grants might we possibly get, what do we have to do to ensure that we be the best possible candidates for those grants, and just generally, how do we make sure that we can reduce the cost of this project for the citizens of Gerhart? You know, I hear Mr. Sweet tonight raising a couple of things about a couple of grants that he's apparently just now decided we're ineligible for. You know, I think it's nice that there's been some work done, but again, we're a month away from the election on this bond measure. And the reality is this bond measure is large. It's very large, no matter what anybody wants to say. And the reality is it seeks to fund a very, very expensive fire station relative to everything else that's going on in this country right now. It seems to me that what grants we might possibly get would have been something that we would have been looking at for years, since this process has been going on for years. And it's very disappointing to hear right now, a month before the election, that there's a little bit of work now we're starting to look at certain grants. I mean, I would like to know what has happened in the last 2 years. Precisely what grants have we evaluated? Who is responsible for doing that? Who is leading that project? I would think that would be a prime project. I mean, you're talking about building a $15 million building as a public force. The statements that are largely being put out to defend the fact that the city really has not done much in the way of trying to get grants for this project are either that, well, if we get the bond passed for the full amount, it will be easier to get grants.
Now, I'd like to know, and that appears to be the position and the understanding of the council, and that's being repeated by council members frequently in public. Where did that information come from? Because I was an attorney representing public sector clients for over 20 years. I don't know anybody who agrees with that. There may be one or two grants that had those specific terms, but that is not generally true. In fact, we just received a mailer from the vote yes side on this bond, which says completely fallaciously that the council, the city cannot seek any grants until after the bond has been passed. That's completely untrue. And it's that type of misinformation, I think, that is really pissing off the community. So, you know, to the extent that I have questions, I'd like to know the details about what we have done in the last 2 years and who I speak to about that, who's been spearheading this project. So I think this grant situation is very, very problematic. And I don't think anybody believes that if this passes and the city now gets $14.5 million from its residents, that there's gonna be a big push all of a sudden, when there's been nothing for years, to get grant money. And that somehow if that grant money comes in, it's gonna reduce the amount that we're gonna have to pay. I don't think anybody believes that. I don't think that's the reality. If there are grants that come in later, they're just gonna be rolled into the pot. And that concerns me. My second concern that I want to express tonight is that just recently I've been hearing a number of other things about this development project where the fire station is supposed to be built, that particular plot. And so my understanding is that despite the fact that we spent, I don't know what it was, 12 million on this water project, bringing water into our town from Warrenton, my understanding is we still rely very heavily on Warrenton for water, despite all that money we spent. And I understand that Warrenton is getting very concerned about their water situation. And in fact, Warrenton now has a moratorium on providing water hookups to subdivisions outside of the Warrenton jurisdiction. And I also understand that Clatsop County has or is about to implement a moratorium preventing any property that's built in Clatsop County to get a septic hookup that's less than a 1 acre property. Both of those things seem facially to be foundational underpinnings of this whole thing. I mean, either one of those could completely defeat this whole Highlands project and make this whole fire station a farce. It would never happen. Certainly would not happen at that site, which raises a lot of concerns. These moratoria are public record. I mean, this must have come up in the due diligence process for the Highlands plot, correct?
Could I address this, Madam Mayor?
Yes, please.
All right, I'll try to do them in the order they were raised. We've had a number of conversations with DLCD staff about potential grants. We've had a number of conversations, counselors, the mayor, myself, with either Congresswoman Bonamici or her staff. I had a meeting prior to this meeting with staffers for both Senator Wyden and Senator Merkley. They're trying to figure out what federal dollars might be available, so non-ARPA dollars, the ARPA dollars were limited into what they could be spent for by cities, to water projects, sewer projects, broadband projects. There were some other categories such as childcare, expansion. So the cities that you're hearing are doing exciting projects with ARPA funds that seem outside of the box have what are called qualified census tracts, which means that over 50% of the households are at the federal poverty level. So like the reason the city of Baltimore can do parks is because they have qualified census tracts in the city of Baltimore. As was discussed earlier today, our average household income is $80,000 per household plus, which means that we cannot make findings that were substantially similar to a qualified census tract. What grants might be available from the state will depend on what state and or federal funds are available. And as the city manager said, one of the things that will be looked at is community support. We will also be soliciting funds, I would expect, from private individuals or private individuals that, because of the controversial nature of this, have indicated to the city manager, and some have indicated to me that they want to wait and see whether this passes before they make a hard commitment, because they don't want to make a hard commitment to something that the community opposes. Whether or not you believe that as are valid concerns would be the opinion of anyone. I have received a number of emails indicating that the project, the housing portion of the project would be served by Warrenton Water. It was always the intent that it would be served by Gerhardt Water because it allows us to loop our water system, adding redundancy into it. We will receive the site that is proposed for the fire station and the park if the land swap happens. That is not in any manner contingent upon passage of the fire bond. And that was done purposely by me for the reason of I didn't know whether this would pass or not. It's at one of the highest elevations in the city. It's on one of the most stable dunes in the city. And maybe it doesn't pass this time, but we'd have the property in the queue. Maybe at some point in the future, members of the community would support it. I don't know what's going to happen with any given election, but the deal was structured that way with the mayor and council's knowledge so that the city would have maximum flexibility going forward with that property. So there is no correlation between houses being built and property being given to the city. What needs to happen for the city to receive the property is the UGB swap needs to happen. That cannot be done without the approval of DLCD staff. So that is outside of our control. I can tell you that DLCD staff has looked at our map and looked at the urbanized areas near and around Gerhardt. And those have been looked at as well by planner Scott Friganisi, who's, if you're a public sector attorney, you probably or hopefully knew his father, John, who was kind of a legend in Oregon land use. Scott's been working on this. The last update I got from him is he thinks the prospects are excellent because the areas north of the cities have already been built at urbanizable levels for us because we are on septic. As far as a water moratorium in Warrenton, I heard about that, I think in the last 2 months, but certainly not in the time up until when we were doing the engineering. And that, frankly, I mean, the plan, whether the fire station was happening or not, was always to loop our water for redundancy. And so we were looking to do Gerhardt Water, whether it was under the county zone or the zoning, or whether it was brought into the city's urban growth boundary in that city zoning. As far as Clatsop County moratoriums, I have not heard of that. So that's new news to me. I think that will be unusual to have a 1 acre. 10,000 is kind of 10,000 square foot is kind of the widely accepted standard. I think I've heard jurisdictions say 20, but I can't say that with complete certainty. I have never heard of an acre. There is a state rule that says that allows septic if a series of findings are made that it can't reasonably be served by sewer, but that isn't an issue here because we don't have any sewer. So that's what I have on those concerns. And I'll take my little hand down.
I can add just a few things to that.
Go ahead, Chad.
Those are all valid concerns and things that we are working through. Keep in mind, though, that we are not coming empty-handed to the city of Warrenton and asking for water. That we actually provide most of the water to the city of Gerhart. We buy a portion of the water from the Warrenton's water treatment facility. And just so you know, Warrenton's water treatment facility is located right above Gerhart. That water travels all the way from here to Hammond. We're the first customer on Warrenton and always have been. Now, the other thing that we bring to the table for the city of Warrenton is redundancy for them. We actually have water lines on both sides of this neighborhood that is being proposed already as well. We have a very large water line that goes right up Highlands Lane. The purpose of that is we currently serve 2 communities that are beyond this piece of property, and we take care of that water. The other reason for that line is we offer redundancy to the city of Warrenton. If they have a water emergency, our system cranks up, and through a demand valve, we provide water to the city of Warrenton also. So they are interested in this process. They are under a moratorium for new subdivisions, not single houses out in that, because they are concerned about their water rights. They do take surface water from Lewis and Clark River, which is a salmon habitat as well. And so that does add some challenges to this. But the city of Gerhart's aquifer is performing really well. We have reported this to the council through the state of Oregon's reports. Every year we report to them. And our aquifer, we provide most of the water for the city of Gerhart every year and do so. We are limited in the summertime because of our location and the closeness to Neocoxie Creek. Our wells are out on the beach, but because we're within a couple of miles of a creek, that was the impetus for the water reduction. Water Resources Division hoped that we would be able to get new water rights after we studied the flow in Neocoxie Creek, and would prove to them that there is not a water reduction in Neocoxie Creek from what we're taking out of our aquifer that's located about 168 feet underneath us. There's quite a large amount of water flowing underneath us out into the ocean at all time, and we are tapped into that. So far, we've seen some things about drought in Oregon. Currently, our aquifer is performing as it always has. We don't have a dip with drought, and the aquifer and the system has been performing as designed for the last 11 years, and we're not seeing any reduction in that water. So that's good news towards this as well. And then eventually, again, continuing to work on those water rights, but this is a major conversation in Oregon right now, and there's a lot of bureaucracy in that. So we are keen on getting more rights for us, but in the meantime, we're also thankful to have Warrenton as a secondary connection, and we also have a connection with Seaside that we have shared water with them as well, and we have the ability to get that out. So that's just kind of an overview of what's happening with that. There is a lot of work to do, but that process is also going to go through the land swap deal. But we have been in communication with Warrenton's engineer, Warrenton's city manager, and they were reaching out to Seaside as well to talk about what this all looks like for the group, because we got to do this together.
So my understanding is that the city of Gerhart provides water sufficient to satisfy the needs of the Gerhart residents only about 4 to 5 months out of the year.
Oh, actually,
and the rest of the year, we're buying water from Warren.
Exactly the opposite. we're able to provide water for all but 4 months out of the year. And we buy a portion of our water those 4 months of the year from Warrenton, but not all of it, because we're running as hard as we can within our permits. Our permits go down.
Right.
So that's why we can't produce. So it's actually the opposite of that. We provide our water most of the time.
Okay, we gotta move on.
Oh, sorry.
All right.
But I will be available to you if you have any other questions and if you have any ideas for the construction grants, because those are true.
Thank you, Mitch. And-
Sure.
And we did have a subcommittee, Council Fackrell and I don't think I was mayor back then, it was about 2 years ago. We spent quite a bit of time looking at grants. The rural USDA grant was probably one of the big ones that kept popping up. And even 2 years ago, when you're looking, Gerhardt's median income is higher than one would expect. And now, even 2 years later, it's even higher than it was then. And that does make getting some of these grants a lot trickier, but we are all really interested. So like, if you have expertise, let us know. You know, we'll put you to work. We'd love to. So Bob Maury, are you still on the call? And do you have, would you like to speak? Not hearing anything.
He was there.
Yeah, there it is.
There we go. Hi.
Oh, okay. In
Um,
the dark.
well, my last one's a pretty simple one. It is, I was involved with many years with a city in New Zealand where we had 25, 27 public restrooms. Anytime we had graffiti, we immediately painted out graffiti. Our one public restroom has had.
Excuse me, Mr. Maury?
Yes,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but could you give us your name and your address, please?
oh,
for the
I'm sorry.
record?
Yeah, Robert Morey, 271 D Street, Gerhart.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We have, what we have is, I was in town about a month and a half ago, went into the men's restroom down at the tennis court, graffiti on the inside of the door. Was in town here about a week or so ago, graffiti on the inside of the door. And if you're trying to have a premier thing that we see coming in the city, and we don't have a program in place for painting out graffiti on our public buildings, I would suggest you give it some thought.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I got your text today about that for the first time, so, or your email. That's appreciative. And inside of the door at all hotels and things like that are something that's sorely missed, because usually housekeeping and staff leave the door open, go ahead and do their thing. They don't really notice. So I appreciate the heads up. We'll get that taken care of.
One last thing. Can I make a comment on I did not write anything on the land swap, the UGB land swap.
Yes, go ahead.
First of all, as I wrote you in June of last year saying I thought it was a poorly set up transaction. We did not get anywhere near fair value for the community in terms of doing the land swap. This is a project, particularly if they don't have water. At that time, I didn't know they didn't have water from Warrenton. That's essentially almost undevelopable. And what you got was a piece of land that was initially told in June of last year is going to be 70 feet high. There's a nod at 70 feet. And that if it deal fell through, we'd at least end up having a great site that could be sold, could possibly used for residential purposes. Well, it had 5 access points trying to get out, 5 lots trying to get out on Highway 101 and a blind intersection across wetlands. In balance, I just think it was a terrible transaction that I hope we can do something as a community, not you guys, to block this land swap. It is not good for the community. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Christy, is there anyone with their hand raised in the audience?
There is not.
Are you opening up to general questions? Hello?
Can you?
The visitor section is still open, so. if you've got
Yeah,
another
can you
visitor,
state your name and your
Yes.
address?
Yes, thank you. Jack Zimmerman, 408 West Kershal Circle, Gerhart. I want to go back to this water issue. I think most of you are aware that we've attempted over the last few months to point out a lot of issues with regards to the Highlands, but the most pressing of this time, as far as I'm concerned, and others, is the water. I have called and talked to Nikki Hendrickson, the water master of the Oregon Conservation Board. Contrary to what's been represented here, Gerhardt's not on an aquifer. You're not sitting on a captive pool of water. You're on groundwater. The whole issue of water is a pressing issue in terms of the county, in terms of Warrenton. They are desperately attempting to conserve groundwater. There is an imperative issue that by the city taking in this subdivision swap, as Mr. Maury pointed out, you are circumventing both the densities goals of the county and of Warrenton, and you're circumventing their conservation issues because you are allowing a higher density and it completely confounds everything the county's attempting to do. Now, it to me is imperative that the right information is communicated to people. There is nothing that the city has published that I can see, and I will stand corrected if I'm wrong here, that shows that the groundwater has been properly monitored. There is nothing that we know of that shows the consumption pattern of our city. And all we have is published information from Warrenton that says in the summer peaking season, Gerhardt represents one of, if not the second largest consumer on their system of their available water. And during the non-peaking season or the winter season, Gerhardt still buys approximately 8% on average of Warrenton's available water. So to blush through this whole issue as if it's something that is not an event, that's a false narrative. This is a huge event for not only Gerhardt, but the whole county and Warrenton. So it confounds me, why in the world are we trying to dance around this like there's nothing wrong? Because it's published. You can call up to Warrenton and they will verify the consumption patterns of Gerhardt. So why are we insisting on trying to frustrate neighboring communities in a jurisdictional thing called the county? I don't understand. And I think there's a lot of people in this town that don't understand. And I think, Paulina, we talked at one time at coffee with regards to Mr. Maury's comments about the exchange, the land swap. I asked a simple question as to what does like kind mean? And that was given to you in the context of Peter Watson, I believe, and I don't want to put words in Peter's mouth, said that we have to swap like kind property. And I asked the simple question, what does that mean? And maybe Peter, you could enlighten us.
I sure will, Jack. Happy to enlighten you. What it means in a land swap is that DLCD means that if it's an R1 zone that you're swapping, you can't make the other parcel R2. So if you're taking out R1 zoning, that the land past the state's no build line, then that zoning where you're putting that zoning also has to be R1. If you look at those statutes, there's no flexibility to change the zone. That seems counterintuitive to the state's land use goal 10, but we verified that with DLCD staff, and that is correct. It's zone to zone. So if it were a C1 zone that we were trading, we could only use a C1. The land that's being traded is R1, so the new zone would be R1.
Okay, I understand that. And that supports with what I thought was happening. So my question now is real quickly, do we have candidate properties to do the swap?
Yes.
Yes. So we have a lot of acres. How these mapping errors happened or why, nobody knows. But our urban growth boundary goes, there's a significant portion of it, including lands owned by the state that are west of the no build line, which means that no structure can legally be built on them because they're west of the no build line. That came to light when we were doing our buildable lands inventory housing needs analysis, when they came back and said we had capacity for something like 700 houses, and we said how. So when we asked the firm to ground truth to ground, what we learned was that there are a lot of acres that are on the beach, that are inside our both in the dunes and on the beach west of the no build line, that are a part of our UGB. There was some other stuff that we discovered too, like the butterfly sanctuary was counted in our housing needs analysis. I'm not going to get into all the technical issues,
Yeah,
but
I understand.
Resulted in some corrections made by the planning firm that conducted the analysis.
Okay. Well, that will become apparent here towards the end of the transaction, I'm sure, as to that status. But I want to go back to Mr. Cogan's remark about the county's efforts to slow down or lessen the density of housing on the North Plains groundwater. In fact, you have a subdivision north up by the Hertic meat processing called the Dunes, and it's limited to 1 acre, 1 house per 1 acre.
Is that because of the county, or is that because of an HOA?
That's because of the county. The county imposed that. You know, I think it's clear. I'm pretty sure we sent publications put out by the county and Warrenton to all of you as best we could to try to point to this issue that you have a county-wide effort and at least one participating city called Warrenton trying to manage its groundwater by conserving and protecting the density of housing on it. And
excuse me, Madam Mayor,
when,
how long do guests speak?
I'm sorry, you're cutting out on me.
We're at 4 minutes.
Oh, okay, all right, fine. You can cut me off, but the point is, there is a real issue here, and it's going to be dealt with, and it will be a clear issue. And I think the city of Warrenton will have a sympathetic ear along with the county. And then if you don't want to talk about it anymore, then I'll stop. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman.
Madam Mayor, there's 3 points in there that were just not quite correct that I would do as quickly as possible, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The water conservation plan is what we're working on as well, something that is also near your heart, and it is part of a process that we look forward to getting into. As far as our testing and the amount of testing and monitoring that we do with our water, we are in excellent standing with the state of Oregon. We have no detrimental issues with that. And all of the data about the wells and our performance on that is online and available at the Water Resources Division. So please take a look at that, but we are in really good shape.
And I have, Ted, and it's incomplete. And you can't keep throwing this stuff back on websites with pro forma numbers. What we've asked is just simply, who monitors it? Okay, give me 3 minutes to rebut the statement.
Well,
Who monitors our groundwater? Who measures static operating pressures and levels of standing water? Who's making the assessment that our groundwater is in good shape? Is it a trained reservoir engineer? Or is it just a bunch of people getting around saying, yeah, it looks good? And I don't hear that happening. And that's why our data request is specific to those types of questions. It's not to be something to obfuscate the issue. It's trying to put some light on.
I'm gonna call
All
for
right,
order.
fine, I'm done.
If you could do a response
Sure,
on the blog,
sure.
send it out, please.
Yes.
I'm sorry I didn't hear you, but it hopefully wasn't directed at me.
That's correct. Is there anyone else on the call that would like to speak? Okay, we're gonna move on. Thank you, visitors, for showing up and talking. Appreciate it very much. And we do not have any ordinances or resolutions. We're gonna move on to old business. Just for a time check, it's 8:45. We have the Parks Master Plan. And we were going through the plan. We were on page 14 when we stopped. We were just starting with policy number 9, which is on page 15, really. Any comments from counselors on page 9?
We're not gonna be able to.
Page 9, is that 2.C?
Yeah, is that?
Sorry, page 15, it's policy 9.
Oh,
I probably missed it. I know the yellow number 7 under B was something that I had put in my notes to be added, and it was.
So you're on page 19.
I'm on page 15.
Oh,
I thought we ended at,
It was policy 12 we ended.
I know that's
what I
I'm
thought.
sorry, I was going by the minutes.
I think that's where we kind of got bogged down with,
benches.
well, we did talk about benches after 12, but Peter was starting to go into some of the legal issues with the
Yes.
plan. And then the plan asked,
Oh, yeah, I did draw a big line there. Right, I drew a big line after 12.
Rita about her comments on the benches. So I'm not sure where we're at.
And I don't even know if we resolved the Parks Advisory Committee. Did we actually resolve that issue?
Yeah, my note here says, well, it needs discussion is what I wrote. And then my other notes were meet 2 times a year, prioritize action of parks. My comfort level is to have an ad hoc committee of people who we can call upon to look for grants or to volunteer to help with a particular park or the Ridge Path. I guess I see something a lot more ad hoc than another layer of bureaucracy, really. My own personal opinion.
I know Peter would like some direction at this time, but we're going to have a special meeting on the 19th. I would like to make a motion that we table this until the 19th and move on so we can get the rest of this stuff taken care of and we can get out of here in a reasonable amount of time.
If I could have 5 minutes just to ask about 6 questions, and get just maybe consensus, it would be really helpful for me. I promise I won't take very long.
I think it's important to do that then.
Yeah.
Okay. in section 3.6, after listening to your comments about the pickleball, tennis, basketball, I thought a solution might be to say that this park, the facilities are dedicated for active outdoor recreation and will continue to be used for priority sports. So that would give you flexibility, kind of a class of active outdoor recreation, but would give you flexibility if some sports became less popular and other sports became more popular. Is that kind of in line with what you were thinking?
It sounds very good to me.
Okay.
That does sound great.
Okay, in section 3.10, it said no above ground permanent structures, but our definition of structure is broad enough that benches would be considered structures, as would a flagpole or anything of that nature. So my thought is that we would keep the language in about prioritizing benches, but strike the no permanent structures because those contradicted each other.
Makes sense.
In 3.15, I just wanted to specify that our beach is a state highway, which is why we did not close it during COVID when the other communities did. So that we would need to, my advice would be, we would check with ODOT before we use permanent structures to block off things and things of that nature, just because we would want to keep it legal. My thought on the 3.16 is, instead of saying that the city must have benches there, we could identify those areas as priority areas for proposed benches, and say any other proposed location shall be approved by the city council. And as far as the bench type, one of my thoughts was that you guys could pre-approve 3 types of benches, or 2 or 4, so that people could know that, if they wanted to purchase a bench, this bench would be fine. And then if there was some really cool looking bench or something, that they would have the ability to do, bring that photo to the city council. So if tastes changed or there was a great opportunity for something sculptural, architectural, the city could approve that.
So that would kind of rewrite that long paragraph.
Right, so that's kind of how I was thinking about approaching it, and I just wanted to make sure you were comfortable with that. So we'd have a couple that were just, everybody loved them, they were good to go. And then if folks wanted something, designed by Philippe Stark or something, that they could bring it to council and council could do like a thumbs up or thumbs down.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Okay, 319, this is my last one. So pesticides are regulated by the state. There is a preemption language there. It's ORS 639.055 through 634. And my handwriting's not great. And so I thought we could say, to the extent not prohibited by state law, the city will minimize use of pesticides in city parks. So that way, the legislature has changed this language a bunch of times. My thought with that is that would flag the issue, so that prior to using pesticides or banning them, that someone would look at the state law and figure out what we could or couldn't do.
Great.
That sounds good.
Okay, so that's kind of what I had for you guys, and I feel like you've given me some guidance, so I can kind of come up with some final language.
Great.
Thanks, Peter.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Peter.
you very much. So we'll let it rest there then for tonight.
We have a motion,
And I second it.
and a second, so all we need is a discussion and a vote.
Thank you.
I wanna move.
Discussion.
I'd like to move.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're on to new business. Discussion of loan scenarios. Chad and Brent, I'm gonna let you two talk about this one.
Thank you. Yes, Councilor Warren had asked us to be on for a discussion to discuss the financial scenarios for the fire police station bond. We have the attached calculator that has been on our website. And let's see here. So DA Davidson has also advised council on the pros and cons of both scenarios. One with a rate of $1.15, you'll get less interest over time, but higher payments. And the first 3 years, the other rate is $1.21, results in more interest over time and steady payments over the course of the term. As $1.21 is the higher rate of the two scenarios, just want to remind you that this is the rate that was stated on the ballot title to cover all bases. So you have that attached, it is online, and then there is an explanation on the back as well.
Do we have to decide on?
Or are we gonna have the calculator on the screen displayed?
The issue is that in a lot of the outreach, particularly for Brent, people are weighing in on the two, partly saying, much as like our guests were saying about, where we should already have our grants, that we're gonna get. Well, we should already make this decision, because it will help them decide how to vote. Right. For me, I'm kind of biased. I'd rather just bite the bullet, pay more for the first 3 years and see a lower rate. And Brent is getting feedback that is the opposite of that. And that's why we decided, well, let's have a little bit of discussion. We don't need to decide tonight, but just to kind of give us that, that we're thinking about it.
When do we have to make that decision?
When we go to sell the bonds.
When we go to sell?
So this is all based on assumptions, right? So DA Davidson's are professional financial advisors. They do this for a living. They take an economic model, they put all the factors as of today in a formula, and they come up with what is considered a professional expert opinion on financial funding. There are hundreds of options for funding. When we go to sell the bonds, they will again ask the same question. We know how much you need. We know what your bond says can be your maximum amount that you can impose on taxpayers. Here are some options that best fit the scenario for Gerhardt. So these were two options that they pulled out. One, the standard financing option, which is the level rate all the way down. And then one that showed an opportunity for some savings to the individual for those first 3 years before it kicked back up. So yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just wanting to chime in. The water bonds, we have 2 water bonds that are coming off, maturing in 3 years and 9 years. So the biggest jump was in the initial 3 years where the first water bond was still in play. And so with the reduction in the police fire station bond for those 3 years, it levels out the payments, which makes it much more affordable than it would under the level rate scenario that we're calling scenario 1. But scenario 2 doesn't get you as big a reduction after the 2 bonds pay off because we're having to pay a higher rate. So it is kind of analogous to financing a car over 60 months instead of 48 months. So you're paying more in interest, but the payment is more affordable. So there are many people in Gerhart that it really, $100 a year isn't going to make or break them. For some, however, $100 could be significant. So that's why we have the two options. A lot of people are saying, I sure wish I knew which option you were going to pick before I voted. So that's why we're discussing it now. That's only really surfaced in the last few weeks when we've really gotten out and explained the individual scenarios to people at the fire station open houses and mayor's coffees. And so we were thinking it would be okay to put off this decision until the bond vote took place and we knew we were actually going to have a bond or bonds. But because of the feedback from the community, people would like to have an idea of which direction we're going. So that's why we're discussing it now as opposed to after the election.
So are these dozens of people that have talked to you about it, or just a handful?
Well, I've talked to probably 25, 26 individuals and couples. Most people are fine with either scenario. Those who are of more modest means are more concerned and are more in favor of the second scenario where the payment is lessened initially, but doesn't go down as much later because they would rather have a more stable property tax to budget for. So percentage wise, probably 25% are opting for scenario 2 because they're strapped for liquid cash in their budget. So I don't think it needs to be a straight percentage vote. I think that those voices need to be heard because they usually frequently get overlooked. So maybe we should listen to that. Does that make sense?
Any other thoughts at this point in time by the counselors?
I do not have a problem doing it either way. And I can understand if a person is strapped for cash, how it might be more beneficial, even though it costs more in the long run. But that's my feeling.
Well, I guess I could live with it either way. I do feel like I have a preference toward having the higher payments for 3 years and seeing the payments go down a bit on the 4th year. But I could live with either one.
I feel the same way. I could live with either one.
Same way like this, you bought it, like I see preference to pay out early on and have it drop 4th year. But it is what it is, we need to make that decision.
Right. And Brent, where are you at on this?
Well, I think personally, I could live with either scenario in our budget, but I am very sympathetic to those who don't have the cash flow and have families and budgets. So even though it costs more in the long run, it fits into lower income people's budgets better in the second scenario. So I would lean towards going with that.
So I just want to know, does staff have heartburn with us making a decision? We do have only discussion on our agenda. Do either of the three of you feel like we would be ill-advised to make that determination now?
I would say that you would be ill-advised to make that decision now. I think that you could make a consensus that this is the option that you think would be likely the best option, but I think that everybody needs to remember, especially in economic times, we project out using a model, which means any variables in that model, hence scores, interest rates, anything that may impact that, we will never go over the 1.213, but how we structure the finance, depending upon those variables, may change the way we fund it, because they could reduce the amount of money that we get because we have the 1.213 limit. So I just caution with information that we've talked to with DA Davidson, interest rates jumped pretty significantly up. They're not particularly alarmed. We still are within our model, but we don't know where that's going to go. And so I would hate to see you lock yourself in. You could definitely send a consistent message that this is based on the information you have, where you're going, but I wouldn't vote on it. Well, I guess you can change your vote later.
Well, yeah. I think the discussion's healthy. I don't really want to entertain any motions. I think we heard two people say somewhat of a preference, but we can probably live with either option. We heard two saying they can live with either, and one saying because of feedback he's gotten that, he would perhaps lean more towards the flat cost option, but it feels premature to me.
And the calculator is a really powerful tool. Brent has taken everything that an economic model has deemed as accurate at this moment, and he's put it into a spreadsheet, and it, at this point is the best factual data that we can get out based on what we have today that will impact the rates over a period of time.
Yep, for everybody listening, the calculator is available on the police fire station web page on the city's website, and you can download it. It will only really run on a computer, not a cell phone, but you can download it. The only editable field in the spreadsheet is the assessed value. So you can type in what your assessed value is, and it will calculate what the taxes are for both scenarios. So when you change that to 300,000, whoever's driving the car there.
And Brett, you can get your assessed value based on your past tax statement, is that correct?
Yeah, your past tax statement, or you can look it up on Clatsop County tax assessment. You can look it up there too. So you see that the second row of scenario one says $357, $368, $379. So that's how much the fire station bond would be. The third row, which is the 228, that is the total general obligation bond tax that we're paying, including the $1.15 above for the fire station bond. And then the 700 is the total of all general obligation bonds for Gerhardt. The row below that is the net increase over the base year. So we're calling the current year the base year. So if somebody's paying 424, the new general obligation bond total would be 705, which would be an increase of $281 per year. So that's the net increase after the police fire station bond. And that would work out to $23 per month. So the 281 divided by 12 is $23 a month. So if you can come over to where the first water bond pays off, see the tax goes down after the first water bond pays off. And so it drops, the net increase over the base year is $103. And the monthly net increase from the base year is $9 a month. So now let's go down to compare scenario 2. So the first 3 years, the tax rate is less. So the police fire bond is 289, 251, 251. So it's considerably less than what scenario 1 would be. And so the annual change from the base year is $214, $168, $167, and then after the water bond, first water bond pays off, it drops to 122 net increase. So, and then again, the monthly amounts, 18, 14, 14, then it drops to 10 and 11. So the bottom row down there where it's red, the $68, 115 and 127 is the difference between scenario 1 and scenario 2. Does that make sense?
Totally.
It's complicated explaining that to people without taking a lot of time. And so I've only been able to go through about 24, 25 people. And because there are 2 scenarios, you got to go through it twice and then show what the differences are between the 2. And it's complicated to begin with, and then you multiply it times 2 and have to explain the two different scenarios. So our messaging has been clouded because people are still confused. Why are you talking 2 different bond rates? Don't you really know what you're getting? And we don't yet. So
Right.
that's the issue.
Well, we know the maximum.
We know the maximum. Yep. And the maximum dollar amount that we can be approved for.
Well, I'm ready to move on. Anybody
Okay.
else have anything else? Okay, the next is tax relief program.
Whoop.
Brent, do you want to talk about this a little bit? I don't see any information, but.
Yeah, I do have a draft program that I'd like to just talk about right now as a concept. So many jurisdictions have subsidy programs to assist low and moderate income people and households. So the normal cutoffs for subsidy programs such as that would be 80% of area median income and 60% of area median income. So 80% for Clackamas County right now, family of four, because it's adjusted for household size, family of four, 80% of area median income would be $58,320 for 2021.
Clatsop County or Clackamas?
I'm Clatsop. What did I say? I'm sorry, Clatsop. I'm too used to working in the Portland metro area. So 60% of area median income would be $43,740 for a 4-person household. So as Justine mentioned earlier, we are kind of flush with cannabis money right now. So I think it would be prudent to take a little bit of that cannabis money, like for example, $30,000, and allocate it, have people submit a very simple half-sheet application outlining their name, income, address, copy of their property tax statement, and copy of their income tax and 1040. And if they meet the income criteria, they can, depending on their income level, if they were below 60% of area median income, we could do 100% of the tax increase due to the fire station bond. And if they were between 80%, I'm sorry, between 80% and 61%, maybe instead of doing a full subsidy of the increase, do 75% or some lesser fraction. So it would still help them out budget-wise. And just throwing out some guesses, because we've all got to make assumptions about this. If we allotted $30,000, I think we could help out about 100 households.
And we have 700 households-ish.
Dwelling units in town, I think we're close to 16.
1600.
Yeah.
I think it's 1600.
Yes.
So 100 households out of 1,600?
For how long?
Well, this would be a 1-year program, and if we decided to renew it, we'd have to reallocate money next year.
So they'd have to reapply every year.
Yeah. If you wanted to do it that way, you could do a 3-year approval. But you know, their income could change from year to year. So if you don't mind pre-authorizing multiple years, you could do it that way, or structure it, just apply annually.
Peter, do you have any legal speak on this?
So I've drafted these type of programs in different jurisdictions. I've seen tens of applications. I don't ever think I've seen, over 100. We have gotten quite a bit of cannabis money that is 3%. We're going to, I looked at the state's projections. The projections are that sales are going to continue trending slightly up, not a huge difference. But that seems to be a pretty stable source of income as long as there are cannabis dispensaries in the city of Gerhart. And based on the amount of tax we're getting as compared to what I would expect, I think there'd be plenty of money to fund the program. I think we could do a 2-year authorization. The people that I've seen use these sort of programs are generally on fixed incomes. So I think I wouldn't have any heartburn with a multi-year authorization, as long as 2 years, that would be good. Beyond 2 years, council could turn over, and our general rule is we don't want to bind to future city councils. So we'd want to look at probably not at too lengthy of a duration, but 2 years doesn't give me any heartburn.
Well, I think it would be attractive if we ended up going with the bond scenario, particularly that has the heavier first 3 years, to make a program that covered that 3 years, even if it had an annual update or an annual reapplication. I like the idea of trying to cover that first 3 years, particularly for folks who are on those fixed incomes or lower income, and if we were to go with that bond scenario, that just makes me feel even better about doing a program like that. Anybody else have any other thoughts?
I would agree with your comments there, Lana. I would also, if we were to entertain this, I'd like to see examples of other jurisdictions and how they've kind of laid it out. I know you talked about those, Brent, and Peter, but just laying it out in front of us to kind of take a look at.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. A lot of times these programs have to do with utilities, so it might be electricity or water, but I can certainly pull some examples that other cities have done.
And I think Brent sent out his draft.
Oh, I didn't get that.
Did you send it out?
He did intend to send it out, but we didn't put it in the packet, and I can't explain why. It was a decision that I made not to put it in at the moment, and then we were gonna do it later when we did. So we can
So
forward that
it only
information.
came to me, okay.
We can forward that information to the council and put it in this discussion point as well for reference. And my apologies to you, Brent, for missing that.
That's okay. Would have been nicer to have everybody on the same page, so to speak. But that's okay. We'll get it out later.
The hour is late, sorry. Okay,
No problem.
next item of business, Sexual Assault Awareness Month proclamation. We need a motion to approve this proclamation, should you want to do that.
I'd like to move that the council proclaim April Sexual Assault Awareness Month per the attached proclamation.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you from the folks at the harbor, and Chad, will you quickly read the proclamation?
I will, Madam Mayor. Thank you. The proclamation, whereas sexual assault affects Oregonians every day, whether as a victim or survivor or as a family member, friend, partner, neighbor, employer, or co-worker of the survivor, and Whereas Oregonians of all gender identities experience sexual violence, including an estimated 1 in 4 adult women who have been the victim of rape, and nearly 1 in 5 men who have experienced sexual violence in their lifetime. And whereas certain populations in Oregon experience much higher rates of sexual violence due to systematic oppression and inequality, and whereas compassionate, courageous, and dedicated individuals, local organizations, and other partners have provided services and support for victims and survivors and work to prevent sexual violence for decades. And whereas sexual violence is preventable and all communities are strengthened by encouraging healthy, nonviolent interactions, relationships, and social norms. And whereas every individual and community in Oregon has a role to play to help eliminate sexual violence by working together to promote social change. Now, therefore, we, city council members, do hereby proclaim April 2022 to be Sexual Assault Awareness Month in the city of Deer Heart, and encourage all residents to join in this observance.
Thank you.
And just for reference also, Chief Bowman supplied the city council with some additional information and classes that are available. He and his team, I believe, maybe both of them, if not just one of them, is attending this as well for additional credit units. So those are also open to others.
The last item of business, Melissa Eddy did request to hold a street dance on Civic Way in July. I believe we settled on July 1st, hopefully. And we would like to hear a motion, if y'all are interested, to allow a 2022 street dance to be held.
I move that we allow the street dance on Pacific Way in July 2022. I move that we approve this request.
I'll second that.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Council concerns, Terry Smith.
I would really appreciate it, Chad, if you put the timer back on the wall,
Me too, please.
so we can tell these people that's 5 minutes and I'm done with it.
Yes, sir. I think we plugged it in and it fried maybe
Well-
today, and so we're ordering another one.
Okay,
Yeah.
But, yeah. Gonna try to do that on my cell phone, but it just doesn't work. So I agree.
thank you.
So cell phones have great timers.
Yeah, well, that's what was going off part of the meeting, but I just couldn't catch up with it all, and I didn't know where you folks were going. My apologies.
Okay, Rita,
I have no concerns.
Austin,
No concerns from me.
Brent, any concerns?
No, I think we've hashed everything out.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Is there a second?
So second.
Oh,
Bye, everybody.
Peter, are you waving goodbye or you have a concern?
Yeah, I was waving goodbye. I've had
Oh,
fun.
okay.
Say aye.
All right.
Aye.
We'll see you later.
Bye.
All right.